Hello, yes, it's Joe here for Joyrider TV, coming live from the Wildwind workshop on Wildwind Beach, Vasiliki, Greece. Yes, that's right. It's Friday, the 20th of August. If you happen to be watching this at a later date, then there we are. This is being recorded live, but if you are watching this later, do feel free to ask questions in the comments, and I'll either get back to you in the comments or I'll respond in next week's live Q&A video. It's been absolutely cooking on gas here today. I've just come in off a Hobie 16 where we hit warp speed, and I even had a man overboard recovery, which will be in a video going out tomorrow. I think on the thumbnail I will write warp speed because it was very fast. Hello to everybody who's already tuning in. Hello to Seafront Gamer, Charlie. Great to have you on board. Hello to Stuart. Hello to Hayden. Hope you're having a good day. Yes, it has been a good day. Hello, Greg. Been loving the videos last couple of weeks. Great to see. Thank you very much, Greg. And great to have you on board. Right, so as always, I've got some preloaded questions to go through. So I think I might just crack on with some preloaded questions. So steaming in, the first one comes from Brian, and this was in response to the light wind jibing video, I think, or it might have been the heavy wind jibing video, but either way the answer will be the same. Brian asks, what is the purpose of putting your hand on the sheet between the blocks when moving over? Brian says, I mostly tried to stay out of the way, which does sound like a very sensible thing to do. But as we're jibing the boat, when we go into the middle of the boat, we get the stick on the new side, as we've seen, and then we push the stick, and then we take, it's got a few different purposes. So let's just draw a little bit of a picture. This is the back beam. There's the boom, back of the mainsail like that, boom, going to the mast. Thus, and then let's draw the main sheet in a different color. So the main sheet would be kind of like this. So what we're doing is we've got the stick with the new hand, and by grabbing the main sheet between the blocks just there, firstly, it gives us a little bit of stability. So it's quite handy to balance against. But secondly, what we're doing is we're just holding the main sheet blocks there, and we're feeling for when the sail goes kind of slack. So when the sail does go slack, it means that's the time that we just guide the main sheet across, and it means that we know exactly when we need to duck our head to go under the boom because we're pulling it across. So it really reduces the risk of getting a knock to the head. So that's a good reason. And it also means the sail isn't just going to slam across hard, because we're just going to use the arm a little bit to put a bit of suspension, a bit of give into the sail there, so that it doesn't slam across quite as hard. So it's got quite a few purposes of putting the hand there. So I hope that answers your question there, Brian. I'm just lacking any live chat at the moment. So if you are chatting live, oh, here we go. Hey, it's Dave. I just said I'm lacking live chat, and Dave's there with some live chat. Yo, Joe, see you soon. Can't wait to spank some monkeys, cook the chicken, and give some special beans. Oh, and sing some more White Slice Blues. Yeah, that's, of course, Dave at Lake Lanier, Georgia, who is going to be making the trip across the Atlantic to come and see us here at Wildwind Beach Club. Very nice too. Looking forward to it, Dave. Very much so. Hope you're bringing your drone You could try chasing me around the bay. That will be a lot of fun. All right. Oh, we've got Jose in Macau. Thanks for tuning in, Jose. Hope you're having some good sailing these days. I think Jose is sailing. When he was in Show Us Your Cat, he was sailing the Getaway, doing a lot of good work teaching kids how to sail there. I hope that's going well. All right. So next one in the preloaded questions. So this is the preloaded questions. So, all right, we've got Jock from Tanzania. Good to have you with us, Jock. It's difficult for a crew to trapeze when the sea is bumpy and windy. How can you keep your balance as the crew? It is easier for the helm to keep balance. Yeah, so the first thing that's really going to help the crew to balance on the trapeze. Hold on, I'm just going to get something to wipe the board with. Here we go. All right. So I think what we're going to do is draw a top-down view of the boat. So is this good on the, yes it is. All right, so here is the boat. How can the crew be more stable on the trapeze, especially in big seas? Well, the first thing that the crew can do to be more stable is have a wider stance. The wider, this is obviously not to scale. Let's just be clear there. So the wider that the crew has the stance, so the further apart your feet are, it's going to give you a much more stable platform, and that is going to help a lot. Then if you feel that you're getting pulled in one direction or the other, you need to brace with the opposite leg. So if you feel like you're getting pulled towards the front, so if we're getting pulled towards the front, which would usually happen as you go further back, because the pull is always going to be coming from the mast. So if we go further back, the mast is further in front of us, that's going to pull more. If we're further forwards, then we're going to be almost directly beneath the mast, and we're more likely to be pulled to the back. I believe, I wouldn't be surprised if almost everybody in the world who's ever sailed a 16 has been at some point off the back. So if we are further forwards, we want to have the front leg slightly bent, back leg straight, and that straight leg is going to brace against going backwards. And of course, in the same way, if we're going further back on the boat, we want to have the front leg straight, the back leg slightly bent, and that is going to brace against going forwards on the trapeze. So that is number one for being more stable on the trapeze, bracing with the legs. Number two for being more stable on the trapeze is you want to be holding on as the crew to the jib sheet. The jib sheet, as well as controlling the jib, you can use it to some degree to give you some stability. If for any reason you don't want to be holding the jib sheet, like perhaps because you don't want to be trimming the jib too much, or maybe you're double trapezing and the other person on the trapeze has got the jib sheet, then you could even, instead of the jib sheet, you could take the righting line, and that is going to give you a lot of stability, and that is going to stop you from swinging backwards. Then to stop you from swinging forwards, what you've also got available is the traveller line. So if you take that as well, then that means you've got a rope at the back, rope at the front, very stable indeed. But another popular method, especially in the 16s, is to have what in some places is called a chicken line or a reaching line. And that would be a rope, if we draw in the pylons here, a rope that runs from here around here, and back here, and then some sort of arrangement with elastic to hold it in position, you can then, this rope will always be there just underneath the trampoline, and you just reach in, you grab it, and then there's a really solid line to stop you from going forwards. So there we go. There are some methods to make your stability on the trapeze better. Okay, I've got in the studio today Harry, this is Harry. He's helping out in the studio today. He's the studio audience. Any questions, Harry? No questions from Harry just yet. All right. So hello to everybody who's tuning in. Let's see who is on board. Hello, Dawson. All right. All right. So Jose will be getting some more sailing as soon as he gets a new job. Greece is on the map. Nice. All right. Greg says, do you know of any ways of making a boat more buoyant in the water? For example, sitting higher, almost making it lighter to speak. No, in short, if you happen to have the only extra buoyancy that actually goes into the hull is when the boat is in the factory being made, it has some big foam blocks put inside the hulls. And the purpose of those foam blocks is so that if your boat gets badly damaged while you're out sailing, like chopped in half, those foam blocks will stop the boat from sinking completely. But there's no real method to put more buoyancy in the boat. There's often been talk of, what about if we filled the hulls with helium? Would that work? Don't think it would, but maybe it would if you had very tight hulls. But as far as I know, there is no way to put more buoyancy into your boat. Unfortunately, it would be quite fun. All right. The only things you can do to make your boat sit higher in the water is by having less weight on the boat. So less people on the boat, lighter sailors, perhaps don't wear as much sailing gear, whatever you can do to reduce the amount of weight on the boat there. All right. Dawson says, I'm going to race some opties tomorrow. Lake Victorious Club, South Africa. Very nice, Dawson. Good luck with that. Hope that's good fun. I dare say there'll be a good turnout. All right. All right. Dawson says, all the research I've done, it can't be done. I have a plywood. I think build the fiberglass ones sit higher in the water. Yeah, I wouldn't go taking your boat apart to try to make the holes bigger personally. The only thing, that is a viable option is if your boat is very old and for some reason you've got the decks off the boat, like if you're doing a restoration project and you've got the decks off, then and you find the hulls are empty, no foam buoyancy in there, it would be worth putting some foam blocks in the hulls just in case you do get damaged at some time, and that will stop the boat from sinking completely. All right, we've got Chris on board. Hello, Chris. Good morning. I had some great Hobie 14 sailing conditions in southern Idaho on Tuesday. Sadly, the GPS was not working. Oh. My GoPro overlays showed 170 miles per hour. Woo-hoo-hoo! Oh, yeah. That is cooking the juice. That would have to go if, there's a special department on the speed stick called the Lofty Claims Division, which is where a speed comes in and it makes me go, ooh, not sure. That seems awfully quick. All right, great job there, Chris. 170 miles per hour is the new speed to chase. We're only joking here, of course. You can't go that fast on Hobie 14. Okay, Hayden. All right. While that drawing is up, I disintegrated my traveller car on the main sheet by letting it go too far on the rail. I had a knot tied, but the wind still blew the traveller car. What would you suggest I do? Yeah, so I don't know if this is the drawing you're referring to. I think possibly not. But so what's happened to Hayden there is I would guess that even with the knot in his traveller control line on perhaps a windy gybe or something, the traveller car has gone all the way to the outside. If it goes all the way to the outside and hits the end like there on a windy gybe, you're almost certainly going to break your traveller car. All right, do you want to see a broken traveller car, anybody?
Yes, me.
Okay, let's get a broken traveller car.
What's a traveller car?
All right. All right, so these are the ball bearing, well, not ball bearing, but the bearing traveller cars from a Hobie 16 or 17. Quite expensive. So this one's not so bad. This one could actually be repaired. But then what happens is if the traveller car is allowed to hit the end of the track, if it's windy, this piece is going to get destroyed. And even this piece to replace is very expensive, which really makes it essential that when you put your knot in the traveller control line, let's do that in a different color. In the traveller control line, you want to make sure that when the traveller goes all the way out, it's a good bit of distance off the end. You also need to bear in mind the knot that you're putting on the back where you're tying it off here, that knot is always going in the same place, because if it's going in a different position, then your traveller could hit the end. So every time you rig your traveller, just push it all the way to the outside. Make sure that there is absolutely no chance for it to hit the end, and then your traveller car should not end up looking like this. This is expensive.
Wait, what happened with this one?
It hit the end.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. So there we go. Tim's on board. Hello, Tim. Clearwater, Florida. Tim was actually here just a week ago. Got Ricky Nielsen. He's on board.
Yo.
Yeah, live, in fact. Yeah, there's Ricky.
Just got one tiger out still.
One tiger still out. It's getting pretty windy out there at the moment. It's more sort of windsurfing conditions now. Finn Time-Lapse is on board. Sorry, late to the live stream. Not to worry. I think that's Finn, who's in the middle of the night in Australia. All right. Yeah. It's like 4 in the morning or something.
I see it's like nearly the night time.
It's really night time. Okay. So Finn says, would you recommend getting a 16 for 2.5 Australian, which is 1.8 US dollars? Yeah, I think that is I'd say that is a good price for an entry level used 16. That is I'd say that is a sweet spot, that kind of price for a used 16.
Yeah. Because
if you go cheaper than that, then there is a fairly strong chance you're going to have to replace quite a few parts on the boat. But of course, you could go more expensive than that. But for a first 16, I'd say that's not a bad price. Of course, you want to look and see, does it come with a trolley? Does it come with a trailer? What sort of condition is it in? All right, just continuing. Oh, there's all right, yeah, getting on to that. All right, so Finn Time-Lapse also says, and where I sail, there are waves constantly up to about 1 meter. Should I get a monohull or a Hobie? Well, seeing as we're talking about catamaran sailing here, I think you know what the answer is going to be. Get a Hobie. Oh, yes. All right. All right. Greg says that's about £1,300. Thank you, Greg. Oh, or is that £1,300? Yes. All right. Arturo in Guatemala. Thanks for tuning in, Arturo. That's really nice that we really are hitting the corners of the world. Thanks for tuning in. All right, Seafront Gamer, who that is Charlie, who might just happen to be here in Vasiliki at this time. He says, how do sails get made? That
I told him to say that.
That is a great question. Okay, so let's do this in fairly good points. So the first thing before a sail can get made is it needs to be designed, or there needs to be a plan. So the sail would be made of different panels. So we're going to keep it simple here. So if we do like go on. Okay. So the panels of the sail are the different pieces that the sail is made of. So what we'd have, in fact, let's draw the whole thing and then we'll cut it into panels. So there's the whole sail. And then we have the panels. So we'd have a panel here. Like with a 16 sail, the panels would be where the batten pockets go a lot of the time. So these would all be separate panels of the sail. And these days, the panels would be cut out using a machine, which like a laser cutter. Is it a laser cutter? Some sort of cutting machine, which very accurately cuts the panels out. So we start off with our basic panels. Of course, these panels would then have to be stitched together. So the two panels would firstly be glued together using like a double-sided tape. And then once those panels are glued together, they'd go into the sewing machine, the stitching would go in, and there those panels would be joined. So that would be repeated for each of the panels. Once those are all together, there's then some reinforcement that has to be put on. So on each corner, there would be maybe, I don't know how many, maybe 4 or 5 bits of reinforcement. So there'd be a piece put on like that. And that would be glued, then stitched on. The next piece like that. The next piece, and so on, to make the corners of the sail stronger. So that would be stage 2. Maybe not in exactly that order, but this is the sort of things that we need to do. Next, we need to put in the batten pockets. So some strips of cloth would be cut and then stitched on to make the batten pockets. Batten pockets going on. Is everybody having fun? I hope this is ticking the boxes here. After that, we would have to put on the bolt rope, which is the front edge of the sail, which goes up the mast. So that would get stitched on. And for greater accuracy, I think most parts of the sail getting put on would be glued on with like a double-sided tape first and then stitched on afterwards. And then once that's done, there'd just be some finishing touches. There'd also be an extra tape put down the back edge to give it some more strength, like this. And then we're going to need the corners of the sail are going to need holes in them. So after it's been reinforced, there'd be a hole put in the sail with a kringle put in. And actually, I've got just here the device for putting in the kringles, where it goes in here, that these metal eyes goes in here, sail goes on there, this goes in the top, and then it gets whacked with a big hammer, and that makes it permanent. So there we go. And then once we get there, we're pretty much there. Then you'd put the sail numbers on and what have you, and then the sail is made ready to go out. So I hope that's a good answer for you, Charlie. All right. What we got next? Calvin, hi. Will you only go to the Tornado Worlds if you reach your donation goal? Now, that is a solid question. No, if I don't reach the donation goal, then I just have to somehow hide the fact that I'm spending savings from the wife to go to a sailing event, because that is not what savings are meant to be for. But yeah, I'm going to go one way or the other. If the event is going on, I am going to go there. But any donations to help getting to the Worlds, greatly appreciated. All right, we've got Wilhelm, Matthias. Hello in Brazil. Great to have you on board. We've got Phil in Pennsylvania. All right. Why do catamarans lose so much speed so quickly during attack? All right, this is quite a simple one to answer. The reason is that we've got the two hulls. And what we're doing with the two hulls is they're kind of working against each other a bit, like the hulls are having to turn different distances. So if we're tacking this way, this hull is only going a short distance, this hull is going a long distance. So the hulls are kind of fighting against each other as we're turning through the tack. With the more modern catamarans, which have got a flat bottom, like the F-18s with this flat bottom design like this, where if we're looking straight on to the front of the hull, we've got that, and then we've got a deep dagger board. These boats are not going to lose so much speed when tacking. One of the things that does lose the catamaran a bit of speed is that it does take a bit of time to get across the boat when compared to a monohull. But these shaped hulls are going to lose less speed than these shaped hulls, because on these, the water will be up to about here, whereas on here, the water will be there, so there's no resistance. So there you go. All right. Wolfgang says, congratulations to the lovely new 16 sails. They look gorgeous. I would have to agree. They're very nice and very crispy. This is the real, it's the way to buy Hobie 16 sails. If you want original sails, but you don't want to pay full price, but you want them to be pretty much new, is ask your local Hobie dealer if they have eggs, and then you get those sails for probably something like 20 or 30% off retail price, which is a good saving. And that's Wolfgang in Frankfurt. Thanks for tuning in. We've got Frank in Ontario, Canada. Hi, Frank. And in fact, let's go on to Frank's preloaded question right now. All right, just looking at the preloaded questions. And Frank says, so I'm just going to... I noticed on one of your jibing videos that your Hobie 15 has double trapeze on it. And Frank has been suggested not to put a double trapeze on his Prindle 15, because if he did that, he would be in danger of snapping the mast because of the extra weight out on the trapeze. Have you double trapezed on your Hobie 15, and is there a risk of snapping the mast? Now, this is a fine question. I did actually go out into the boat park earlier, taking measurements of the different mast sections. In fact, if you just bear with me, shall I get this list of numbers? Yes, I will. Hold on. All right. I'll be back. Okay, I'm back. All right. Sorry about that. All right. So here are just some numbers just to throw at you. So you could compare this to the measurements on your Prindle 15 there, Frank. If this is the mast, like this, something like this, then we've got, I took two measurements. One was the width of the mast like this, and one was the depth of the mast like this. And then we had the wall thickness as well. So how thick the actual metal is in the mast. So the Hobie 15 has actually got the same mast section as the Hobie 16. So the strength of the mast is not an issue with the Hobie 15 because it is the same wall thickness. It is exactly the same section as on the 16. And the measurements here are, this is 11.5. We're all metric here. And then this is 8 centimeters here for the 15 or the 16 with a wall thickness of 2 mil. There we go. All right. So the other sections that we're using on the Hobies is the same on the Hobie 14 and on the Hobie Dragoon. Now that is, let's see, 6.5 here and the depth 9.5. But the same wall thickness as the 16, that 2 mil there. So with the Dragoon, especially, we do have a double trapeze on the Dragoon, and we have double trapezed these boats with 2 adults on there. Now, I wouldn't say that that is a particularly good idea to be doing regularly, but if you're going up to about total weight 120, maybe 125, 130 kilos, which is 130 kilos, which is 286 pounds, up to about 286 pounds, I'd say you should be okay. But what I wouldn't do is go putting 2 big guys on the trapeze on a mast which isn't designed to have that sort of weight. What you also have to bear in mind, it's not just the mast. When you put more weight out on the trapeze, you're loading up the whole boat a lot more. So everything on the boat is taking more load. The rudders, the hulls, so the sides of the hulls, that outside of the hull is going to have more pressure on the more weight that you put out on the trapeze. The way the beams attach, so if you've got bolts going in, there'll be more pressure there. There's going to be more pressure in the sails, on the rigging, absolutely everywhere. And one place where there's going to be more pressure, which shouldn't be underestimated, is the front beam. Because as you put more weight out on the trapeze, it's going to push down more on the mast, which is going to put more pressure on the front beam. Now, sorry, I haven't looked at any pictures of Prindles recently, but I can't remember. I dare say the Prindle 15 does have a dolphin striker, which means the dolphin striker should add a lot of support to that front beam, but just that is something else to consider. Back in the day, I used to sail a Dart 18 and I put a double trapeze on my Dart 18. And of course, the Dart 18 doesn't have a dolphin striker. So this is really dangerous for the front beam because a lot of load going down there. So there you go, Frank. Those are the considerations for putting the double trapeze onto your Prindle. Okay, thanks for the question. All right, Finn time lapse. What's the difference between a cheap 16 and an expensive one? Okay, an expensive one would be newer, which basically means it's going to have less things that need to be replaced over time. So the first things to go on a boat. Let's actually write a list. Okay, so the older your boat gets, what are you going to have to replace? Number one, rigging. The wires that are holding the mast up. Number two, after the rigging, probably the ropes. They're going to be looking quite tired sooner, and they might get towards snapping. Next, after that, sails, trampoline. After the trampoline will probably be like rudder parts, and then after that would probably be maybe soft bits on the hulls. So basically, when you're buying a more expensive or a newer boat, you're just delaying having to replace or repair all these parts. So it's just going to come later. Like when a boat hits maybe 10 years old, then you'll definitely want to replace the rigging and the ropes, depending on how much it's been used, the sails and the trampoline. If it's been left out in the sun to the elements, you'll have to replace the trampoline. In fact, these could be the other way round. If the boat has been left outside with the trampoline uncovered, not with a cover on it, because the trampoline has been exposed to the elements all the time. So this is your consideration when buying a used boat, is offsetting the costs of replacing all this lot with how much it costs for the next more expensive boat that you're looking at. There we go. That's a good list. All right, we've got Alejandro. Sorry, I'm late. Not sure if you covered pointing better so that I can pass monohulls on the race course. Was that a preloader? Oh, yeah, here we go. All right, how can you point better on your catamaran? All right, what it all comes down to is getting the boat working more efficiently. So what should we start with? All right, so if we talk about the course, so the first thing and the most important thing is always the course. So it's just the fundamentals of sailing upwind. We want to set our course by, so I'm having to think here, by looking at the jib. So once again, if the wind is light, we've got the telltales on the jib. And if the wind is light, we want to have both telltales flying straight back. If the outside one isn't flying, you head up a little bit. If the inside one isn't flying, you bear off a little bit. If you try in light winds, sailing higher, so light winds, I'd say those very light winds where there's only just enough wind to have your boat moving through the water. If you try sailing higher, the boat is going to go so slowly that your rudders and your dagger boards, or if you've got skeg hulls, or if you've got the asymmetric hulls, they're not going to be working properly because you're going to be hardly moving, which means you're not going to be able to hold a good line going upwind. So one of the things that really helps you to go upwind better, which might sound a bit counterintuitive, is if you actually turn a little bit away from the wind, get your boat going faster to start with, that gets a better flow of water around the rudders and the dagger boards, which is actually going to end up with having those bad boys providing more lift, and you'll end up sailing closer to the wind. So I think that's actually quite a fundamental point for all cases of upwind sailing. The next thing we can look at, so that's the course covered. Next thing we can look at is your crew position. So if we have our boat here, our crew position, we want to have in the light winds, we're really trying to get the bows of the boat down, because on a lot of boats, if we have the side view here, we have a lot of volume of the hulls. If that's the front beam, a lot of the volume is in this kind of area. So if you have your crew weight any further back than where the volume is, you could look at this as being the most voluminous part of the hull, is kind of like the center of this seesaw, like this. Any weight that goes behind this volume is going to lever the front of the boat up. Any weight you have in front is going to lever the front down. But what we're looking to do is to have the boat as flat in the water forwards and backwards as possible. So not with the bows down, not with the bows up. We want it completely flat to have it the most efficient. So a lot of the time that means getting further forwards on the boat than you'd think. So in an F-18, that means in light winds, having the helm just here behind the front beam and the crew just in front of the front beam. Because if we went any further back, we'd start bringing the bows up. Any further forwards than that, like you do see sometimes people are a bit keen getting the crew right up to the bridle wire on the leeward hull. But what that's doing is that's going to have the boat going really bows down, which is going to create a lot of drag, slow you down. There we go. Number 2, crew position. Of course, as the wind gets stronger, so this is with the wind from this direction, we're going to be moving backwards a little bit, because as we're loading up the leeward hull more, we need to move back. And then eventually our sweet spot is going to be focusing the weight on the dagger boards like this. We're putting as much load as possible directly onto the dagger boards, because that is going to give us the maximum amount of lift. Okay, and then finally, so this is the crew position. Finally, with the setting of the mainsail, we want to make sure that at no time the mainsail is oversheeted. So what you should have if you're sailing an F-18, this is a very rough picture of the sail. What you should have, or if you haven't, it's very easy to put them on, is you should have some leech telltales just in the top 3 panels or 4 panels. And if you can see those leech telltales, it means that your sail is not in too tight. If you pull it in too tight, what's going to happen is, firstly, that bottom one is going to disappear because it's going to get blown around the sail. If you pull it in more, the next one is going to disappear, and so on. So if you see your leech telltales are disappearing, you might want to let the main sheet out a little bit just to get those bad boys back. As the wind increases, also with the mainsail, we can increase the amount of downhaul that we have on by pulling the downhaul on more. With the downhaul on minimum, it's going to put our center of effort in the sail kind of like here, as we pull it on more, the center of effort is going to move lower and forwards, which is going to really help to drive the boat upwind. So I hope some of that helps on the race course there, Alejandro. I hope so. All right. I think we're going to leave that one there, though. And then the one last one is just staying out of dirty wind on the race course. Because if you're getting dirty wind, then your ability to point is going to be much reduced. So when we're talking about dirty wind, if the wind is coming from here, then catamarans are really bad for hoovering up all of the wind in the area around it. So from the sail of this boat, or the sails, there's going to be like a dirty wind kind of area that extends all the way back here. So anybody sailing in this dirty wind is not going to be able to point as high and not going to be able to go as fast. It's really disappointing. So you just need to plan your route to try to stay clear of any dirty air. So if you do get into this position, depending on what the course is, you could either tack, or if you do feel that you're slipping a bit, maybe consider just bearing off slightly, get a bit more boat speed, because once you get to about here, then you should hopefully break free of that dirty wind. Okay, so at this stage, we're just going to take a short commercial break for those of you who are watching later. Okay, and welcome back. All right, so we are now at 47 minutes. So if we could have no further questions, please, because I do need to wrap this up on time tonight. Okay, Johnny V online. Hello in Connecticut, USA. Great to have you on board. All right, Hayden says, thanks for all you do. Thank you very much, Hayden. I started watching your channel over a year ago. I bought my first sailboat, a Hobie 16. Couldn't have done it without the videos. Yeah, it's really nice to know that I'm helping so many people to have more confidence to go out, buy a catamaran, and have an idea of what to do with it when you get it, either get it home or get it to your beach, sailing club, lake, reservoir, or wherever it is that you're sailing. So thanks very much, Hayden, for letting me know that it's helping. All right, Michelle, how to pass big waves on a Hobie 14. Whew. So big waves, big question. All right, so wherever there are big waves breaking onto the beach, this is going to be a little bit loose because I haven't sailed in waves for quite some time. But let's just talk about getting off the beach where there are waves coming in. So what you'll usually find where waves are coming in is there are areas where the waves aren't breaking as frequently. So some sort of channel, because as the water comes in to the beach like this, it has to go somewhere. So usually if there are big waves coming into the beach, we're going to draw the beach in green. So these are the waves. The waves are breaking, but then that water has to go back out to sea because it's not just going to keep coming in, because it's got to go somewhere. So what's going to happen is the water is then going to travel one way or the other. And this is what you might call a rip. So you hear about people getting in trouble in surf because they get caught in a rip, because that will take you one way or the other. And then eventually that's going to go back out to sea. So when you're going out sailing with your boat, where these currents are going out to sea, there would generally be smaller waves there. So when you're planning to leave the beach, if there are big waves, just take a little bit of time to observe what is going on out to sea, look at the waves and see if there's a pattern where the waves are actually smaller than everywhere else, because that would generally mean that is where there might be a bit of a current going out, and that's going to help you to get out with your boat. Of course, if the wind is onshore, you're going to have to sail out at a bit of an angle. So what you're trying to do while you're sailing out, how big are the waves? Oh my goodness, they're enormous. Is you want to time it as you're sailing out. So if you can see that a wave is just about to break, you definitely don't want a wave breaking on your boat. So you might have to control your speed. Maybe the wave is kind of breaking here. This is the wave breaking, but down here you can see it's not breaking so much. So you might want to bear off a bit. And then as you're going up the wave, just head up a little bit, bear off over the top to force the bows down to stop getting airborne, and then just carry on weaving your way out. But there is a lot of timing involved, and take your time before you go. Don't be too excited just to put your boat in the water without looking. And then I think that's where we're going, as far as we're going to go with the wave question. Just take your time, have a good look and find a good spot. Maybe there's an option to go like maybe as far as half a mile along the beach where there's a real channel or something, which could be the difference between your boat getting capsized in the waves and breaking the mast, or getting out and having a nice sail. So just pay attention, have a look. Hi Pierre in Quebec, Canada. Nice to have you with us. All right, Steve says, any tips on figuring out how water is getting into my Hobie 18 SX hull? Steve there is in Sea Isle City, New Jersey. Yeah, okay, so you would hope, well, the first place that the water is most likely to be getting into the hull is in any fittings. So the first and most likely is in through the bungs, because the bungs are always under the water. Just gonna get a bung. All right. So when you take your bung, make sure that when you put your bung in, both the bung and the housing that the bung is going to screw into haven't got any sand or dirt on there. Any bits like that are going to cause tiny little holes which are big enough to let the water get into the hull. So make sure all that's clean. The other thing is make sure your bung has got a seal which is in good condition before you put it in. If it hasn't got a seal, you know, maybe you've got down to the beach, you take a look at your bungs, you haven't got a seal, but you don't want to have to go away. Put them in anyway. You're going to take a bit of water in there, but it's not going to be too bad. We're talking about bungs now. Do you want the bung? Yeah, so bungs would be the first thing. Second thing is your bung fitting and the rudder fittings on the hulls, because again, those are the bits that are most likely to be in the water the majority of the time. So the way to test it, in fact, could I borrow that a sec? The way to test, a good method to look at where the water is getting into your hull, if you see this bung, actually there's been, can we see that? There it is. There's actually a hole drilled into this bung. So what this is for is pressure testing the hulls. So what you can do is get some washing up and cover all of the bits that you think, where you think it's possible that the hull would be leaking, with some soap. then put the bung in, attach some sort of pump to the hole, unless you've got a pump that will fit the bung housing nicely, and pump air into the hull.
Can I have crisps, please? Thank you.
Harry wants crisps. I said yes. So pump air into the hull, then look to see if any bubbles are getting blown from any of those fittings. If you see bubbles, there it is, you've got your result. That's where the air is getting in. So if the air is getting it or getting out there, sorry, if the air is escaping in those places, you just need to remove the fittings, reseal them with some sealant such as Sikaflex, and then put them back on, and hopefully that will have done the job. There we go. All right. All right, Thin time lapse. I'm going to have to stop answering your questions because we are running out of time. But Thin time lapse says, should I go for a boat like a Dragoon or should I get a Hobie 16? Really depends on what you want to do with it. Dragoon, better for just youth sailing. But if you're going to be sailing with an adult, then you want a 16. There we go. So we're on to short answers now, by the way, because we are getting up to an hour. I've still got some preloaded questions. If you could stop asking any more questions, that would be great. All right. Tim says older boats may also have too much play between the pylons and the corner castings. Good point there, Tim. Adding bits of can in there can tighten it up, or epoxy. Yes. All right, Dish 46, great to have you on board. All right, Cebu, that's Thomas in Germany. Only 11 days until Thomas is coming back to us. So lucky. Oh, yes, we're lucky to have you back as well. We've got Kurosh in Dubai, who it sounds like Kurosh is somehow Kurosh has gone from Dubai to Canada, and he says, does anybody need a crew? All right, what we can do is set up, perhaps Kurosh, if you remind me later, I'll put it in the community tab on the YouTube channel, and we'll put a notice up. Anybody in Canada near to Vancouver looking for somebody to sail with, Kurosh is on board. All right, we've got Juka D. I like your videos. Bought my first Hobie 16 a month ago. Thanks for the inspiration. Once again, thanks very much for letting me know. Once I get sailing it, I'll send in some pics for Show Us Your Cat. That is great. Show Us Your Cat might be, when we get to September, going back to every week. We'll just see how we go with that, by the way. All right, Hayden says, have you ever sailed an A-class? No, unfortunately, I've never had the opportunity to sail an A-class. It is the type of boat that I would most like to get my hands on, incidentally, to give it a go. That and a mini cat, the inflatable. Really interested to see what those are going to sail like. William, good morning from Yorktown, Virginia, USA. Thanks for tuning in there, William. All right, we've got Bert on board. Good vibes over there. Greetings from Bert from in 2005. Thanks for tuning in. Great to see you. All right, we've got Ollie Smith who's listening in from outside the workshop. Do I get a re or has he moved on? There you get a re. Yeah, Ollie's there. All right, nice one, Ollie. All right, Thomas says greetings to Ollie. It's all very nice here. Got Baycats Ocean City. Hello. I believe we featured in Show Us Your Cat. It's a memory test. A 20 Miracle, I think it was, which was from Baycats Ocean City, I think. Okay, there we go. All right, so I'm just going to answer the final of the preloaded questions, and then we'll wrap this bad boy up. All right, so the next one is coming from Jock in Tanzania, who was talking about trapezing earlier as the crew if you're unstable. He says when it's windy and the wavy, the the 16 is more stable if the helm trapezes first. Is this true? I'd say largely it is true. The reason why, as the helm, you can stabilize the boat much better if you are out on the trapeze is because generally you've got, if you've got some experience helming on the trapeze, it is much easier to control the boat from on the trapeze because you can power the boat up more. Once the boat's powered up more, you're going faster and the boat does become more stable when it's being sailed correctly. When you're not sailing the boat fast, especially in strong winds, you're holding back, the boat is going to feel a lot less stable. So yes, Jock, you are right. Get the helm out on the trapeze first. It's a bit easier also getting out. Whoever gets to go out on the trapeze first is going to have more space on the side of the boat to move in and out. So that will make it easier also. So yes, go out on the trapeze first as the helm, because it will help you to stabilize the boat. There we go. Incidentally, also, there is a new video which is going to be going live in just 30 minutes. I know this is unheard of, that we finish the Q&A and then immediately you've got another video to watch. But this one is going to be very special. It's Murray's. I think it says Murray's on my back. Murray's in the USA, one of the best suppliers of catamaran parts in America, if not the best supplier. They sent me some bits, some things. I think it was last week or the week before, must have been the week before. Someone asked me about the anti-pitch pole plates that you could put on the front of your 16 or 14. Murray's sent me a pair of these anti-pitch pole plates. And yes, I've been out testing them. And yes, that video is coming up in just half an hour. So we need to get this wrapped up so then you guys can watch that and hit the like button, make some comments, that sort of interaction. All right. Nice. Yes, so that's right, Baycats. Yes, it is him with the 20 formula. Hayden says, any virtual regatta in the future? Yeah, I think once the season finishes here, I would very much like to start doing some virtual regatta stuff because I really enjoyed it. It was really good fun. All right. Next preloaded question. No further questions, please, by the way. We've got Jazz, who says, I kite surf most of my life, but I've got a cat now to play with in light winds. But I get a bit nervous because I haven't sailed a cat before and I'm worried in case I get overpowered. Okay, this is a very sensible thing to be nervous of getting overpowered. The first thing to make sure of, if you are new to sailing, cat sailing or any other type of sailing, is to start with really check your weather forecast and just make sure that you're going to get some good sessions getting comfortable with the boat in light winds. So look at your weather forecast, make sure that you're going out in pretty good weather where it's possible, of course, with winds that are light. When I say light, we're talking 8 knots of wind or less. And that should give you time to get comfortable with the boat before you're out in the stronger wind. But of course, there is always the chance you're going to go out sailing and the wind is going to increase while you're out. Now, what can we do about that? Well, what you can always do, the great thing with catamarans is you have got gears to use. The gears come from the traveller for the mainsail. So if this is the back beam and the traveller track, wherever we've been sailing, do check out the videos on traveller position where we're going to go into all of the detail that you need. But the traveller, if we're sailing with the traveller in the middle and we're getting overpowered, then we can change gears by letting the traveller out to varying degrees. You could let it, if you're really not happy with how things are, you can let the traveller go all the way out to the knot, which we talked about earlier. Always have a knot in your traveller car, stop it hitting the end. All the way out to the knot, and then the boat is going to have significantly less power. So once you've let the traveller out, you'll use the main sheet from that position. There we go. All right, so there we go. Let the traveller out. First thing. Second thing, the main sheet should always be in your hand, and you should always be ready to let the main sheet out. Those are the three pieces of advice. Number one, weather forecast. Number two, let the traveller out if it's getting a bit much. Number three, the main sheet is going to save you. Number four, downwind. If you've got to go downwind to get back in, then what you could consider, if it's getting a bit much for you, is to drop the mainsail while you're out at sea. Just come in on the jib, because downwind, it is a bit more difficult to depower because there's the risk of the pitch pole. So drop the mainsail, come in on the jib. There you go. All right. So we've got Alo Surf, who says, in some of your videos, when it's really nuking, very windy, you put a smaller sail. The Hobie 16 sails have reefing points too. At what wind do you recommend less sail? Dependent sail with more control. Yeah, it kind of depends on the sea state a lot, your crew weight, your experience. All right. Yeah, so I would say when you get to about 25 knots of wind, that would be the sensible time to reef the sail. Check out the video on reefing the Hobie 16 sail. Sorry, we are into the short answers section now because we have gone over an hour. All right. Duck Lord, any tips for a youth racer? Yes, I did a whole article on tips for going to events. So check that one out if you can. I've actually got it. Have I got it here? Going to an event. Yeah, so I did do both. There's an article on the Total Joyrider page for going to an event. In fact, should we just see if I can chuck that link in here? Just having a look. Oh, I didn't do it as an article. I just did it as a video. Yeah, so check out in the videos going to an event. There you go, Duck E Lord. All right, Hayden. I was on the phone yesterday with Murray's about the T-shirt. They said it too. When you make an order, you put in the Joyrider code, and the T-shirt, I think that will be in your cart, discounted for free with your order. There we go. So order stuff at Murray's in the USA. Put the code Joyrider in when you're at the checkout. You'll get a T-shirt like this one. It's really nice. All right, Rich, Murray's Rocks. Tom has the goods and he's very knowledgeable. Yeah, I get that impression myself. All right, Cebu says, I come with a non-sailor when he's coming to Wild Wind. Is it better to learn on a monohull or a cat? Woo! To be honest, now this is going to be controversial, but if you really want to learn to be the best sailor possible, it's much better to learn first on a monohull and then transfer those skills to a catamaran afterwards. It's a much easier transition to go from monohulls to catamarans than the other way. So monohull first, catamaran later, better way. Hi, Pedro. No worries if you're a bit late. No problem. All right, no further questions, please. Just going to look to see if we've got any more in the preloaders. All right, we've got one more, and this is from Dennis. Dennis says, here we go. As parents, very often ask questions on forums about adding the masthead float or baby bob to the top of the mast. There is a misconception of the safety it gives. Could we talk about, here we go, it certainly stops the boat from all right, I'm just going to abbreviate Dennis's question there. It's the last question, Harry, and then we'll be done. Yeah. Dennis is asking, is it better to have a masthead float to stop the boat from inverting, but does that make it more difficult for youngsters to bring the boat back upright because of the extra weight it adds at the top of the mast? Yes, the masthead float does, of course, add a lot of weight at the top of the mast. So, well, not that much weight, but here we are. If we've got our capsized boat, masthead float, dolphin striker, lovely. So there's probably a bit of an equation that exists from the maths department that if the masthead float weighs, let's say, 5 kilos and it's at the top of the mast, because of this distance, that weight gets amplified and it actually ends up making it so much more effort or weight required or wind or something required to bring the boat back upright. Yeah, so that is the negative point of the masthead float. If there is enough enough wind to capsize the boat, so I would say capsizing is viable in maybe 18 knots of wind or more. In less wind than that, you should be able to always avoid a capsize, as long as you know, one of the main reasons why capsizes in light winds occur is because the sailors are not paying attention to what is going on. They don't have a hand on the main sheet. They think, all right, it's light wind, we don't really need to focus. You do need to focus if you don't want to capsize. Right, Harry?
Right.
Exactly. Harry agrees. Yeah, so always stay focused. Light winds, you're just as likely to get into trouble as strong winds, because when you go out sailing in strong winds, you've got your best game face on. You're like prepared mentally, spiritually, physically for going out in the strong wind. Whereas in the light wind, that's when people go out, they're not taking it as seriously, and you could get in trouble. First thing. But yes, this is going to make it more weight to pull back upright. So this is the negative point of the masthead float. Of course, there is a second negative point of the masthead float, and that is if you become separated from your boat when you capsize. Maybe you fell off the boat and that's why the boat capsized. And let's see if we can draw swimming. So he's swimming after the boat. With the masthead float, the boat is not going to invert ever, which means if the wind is blowing the boat away from you, which it will be, it is going to go pretty quickly, especially in a strong wind, which means that you really need to stay attached to the boat, because the boat is going to drift very, very fast with the masthead float. That is why here at Wildwind, we don't use masthead floats on our more performance boats which are more likely to be out in the strong winds, like the 16s and the Tigers. Now, of course, there are many positive and very strong safety points for the masthead float. The first one is, and the main one, is that it means the boat cannot invert, which means greatly reduces the risk of getting trapped under the boat. That is the main point of the masthead float. Because if you've capsized, if you end up in this space here, next to the trampoline, let's call this the danger zone. If you ever capsize and you're in this position next to the trampoline, you need to get out of there as quickly as you can, making sure that any other crew members are getting out of there as well. Because if you don't have a masthead float and the boat inverts, you don't want to be caught underneath the trampoline. It would be quite an alarming experience. So this is the number one reason for having a masthead float. You can have all of that. Very important. So the second good reason for having a masthead float is if you're sailing in shallow water. There's the water.
Yeah.
And then maybe it's shallow, maybe there's some rocks under the water.
Or fishies?
Yeah, maybe there's some turtles.
I've seen a turtle on the Agio boat.
Maybe there's sea turtles there who quite enjoy eating the rigging. But yeah, so if it's really shallow water, you don't want the top of the mast going into the rocks, getting stuck, because you might never be able to bring the boat upright. You might damage it. Maybe it's mud. You might get a load of mud at the top of your mast. Not very nice. So it really is a way up with the masthead float.
You can dry the mud with a hose pipe when it comes back in.
You can clean the mud with a hose pipe when you come back in. It's a very good point. But yeah, it's a way up. But what we'll do is we will make a video of how much extra effort does it take. We'll do it on land, no sails up, like we did last year with the different writing lines, to see how much extra it takes to bring the boat upright with a masthead float. But thanks very much for your question, Dennis. It was a very thought-provoking question. So there we go.
Why is there 5 there?
All right. So I think that pretty much brings us to our conclusion. That is the end. So thanks very much for tuning in, everybody. I hope you've got a lot out of this session. I certainly have. Have you, Harry?
Of course I have.
All right, Harry has as well. Yeah, so I'll be back next week with more Q&A. Don't forget, in 12 minutes, so you've got time to go and get a drink, maybe make a sandwich or something. 12 minutes will be the premiere. Unfortunately, I might not be able to make it to that premiere of this new video about the anti-pitch pole hydrofoil plates. That is a juicy video. Check it out. There'll be another video tomorrow, which will be called Warp Speed. We went very fast today on the Hobie 16. Had a man overboard. Like the Flash, exactly. We had a man overboard, frills and spills, like Sonic. Exactly. So I'll see you then. Thanks very much. See you soon. And thanks to everybody for their interesting questions. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night. Oh, hello, Timon. Cheers. Goodbye. End stream.